It's that time again. It's the podcast that takes your personal and professional life to a whole new level. Whether you're selling a product, selling a service, or selling yourself, one thing is for sure. You're always selling for life. Hey everyone, and welcome to another installment of the Selling for Life podcast, sponsored by Conequip Parts, a world of parts with a personal touch. This podcast is about more than just selling stuff. We think if you stick around, you'll get a lot out of it. I'm Steve, and today I am joined by Mr. Bob Lawrence, entrepreneur, venture capitalist, husband, father, and former defensive back for the Williamsville South Billies. Thank you for joining me, Bob. I had to talk you into it because you were kind of busy. You got other stuff going on right now.
Well, you know, it should be working, but...
Well, this is work.
True.
It's part of the Conequip, vision. Reaching out to people, making a difference, helping people do what Conequip has done, and that is take a small little business with 5 people that went on break for 3 hours to a company now with over 50 people, health insurance, and the inability to even take a break for a minute because there's so many sales calls coming.
Living the dream. American dream.
That's right. Okay, so real quick, how have you been, Bob, since the last time we talked?
I've been good, Steve, since a couple minutes ago.
Well, the audience maybe have heard you a few weeks ago.
A few weeks ago with Ryan on the podcast. I don't recall the topic, but yeah, business financing maybe, or taking on debt.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Our ratings have plummeted since that last podcast, so that's why we brought you back.
Oh, thanks.
So today we're going to be talking about, let me say, the topic of the day is... The topic of the day is effort. Putting in effort and what it means to put in the right amount of effort. And I brought you in, actually coaxed you in here a little bit. I dangled the carrot in front of you because I wanted you to share your experience with effort in terms of building what, Bob?
A tiny house.
You built a tiny house.
Built a tiny house. And I knew it was a very transparent attempt to get me in here. You needed someone to talk to.
Right.
And you knew that mentioning something that was near and dear to my heart would get me in here.
And it did.
It did. It worked.
So when it came to building that tiny house, did you just kind of say, you know what, I think I'll just throw a house up and buy a little bit of lumber and see what happens? Is that how it went?
That's what my teenage son said. It required much more effort than that.
Right.
It's a big project. I mean, I don't care if you build a little 6x6 building, it's still 4 walls, a roof, it's still a lot of work regardless of the size. This was a 10x12, but it's pretty tall, and it was a lot of effort.
Right, a lot of planning. You had to really think it through, and you couldn't go in half-assed. You had to do it. You had to have some fire in your belly, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things you can't just leave it there half done, which a lot of DIYers end up with a half done project, and so you really just have to push through and know you have to finish it.
Right, especially here in Buffalo where it's going to snow this weekend, so if you weren't finished, you did it over the summer. How about other things in your life? Are there other examples in your life where you decided to do something and you did it? And tell me about that process.
There's quite a few of those, but one example, because we're talking about building, is that when I finished my basement off one year, and again, very just effort, and just I find that getting started with anything is half of the battle. And I told myself when I finished my basement with this little 30-day push to finish it before Christmas, I would say I go downstairs for 2 minutes and just pick up the broom and sweep the floor. And, of course, that would lead to 2 hours worth of work. So it was just my little gimmick to get myself started. But that effort that you put in, everyone thinks about the job as a whole, and you just have to get started with so many things. Just start doing it.
Right. And professionally, when you're looking at a potential career or whether you're going to school or something, that same concept applies.
It does.
You have to really know what you're getting into, and then when you finally put the boots on, you have to go at it, and you have to go at it full force, or else what's going to happen if you only do something half-assed?
You will fail.
You will probably fail.
Yeah.
Or you just won't do a very good job. And then, of course, if you don't do a good job, Is there any wonder why, or if you don't put a lot of effort in, is there any wonder why it didn't work out or it didn't come out as good?
Well, a lot of people justify that and come up with excuses and reasons that it didn't, but you just have to put the effort into things and get started. I think the biggest thing is getting started. People look at a big project and they think, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get there? But they don't realize all they have to do is get started. And 2 years down the road, you're going to look back and say, holy cow, look what I did.
And people just want the results.
Yes.
And think that somehow, some way they're going to get the results they want simply because they've started, like working out, trying to lose weight. Oh, I'm getting up early. I know I don't.
I'm sorry.
I know I don't really. I used to be able to relate to this.
No, you mentioned I'm cutting out. I'm cutting out sugar. I walked into Steve's office studio, and he's here with a 2-liter of not Diet Pepsi. He says, "I know."
Right.
And then he comes to my office after that, and he's unwrapping a couple of candy bars and saying, "I know."
How many people though decide, okay, I'm going to lose weight, and they start a regiment, right? And they just don't really go at it full force. I remember going to, when I used to work out, there was a gym and they had a pool, and you'd see people in there, and I assumed that they were trying to burn calories because they were doing laps around the pool, but they weren't really doing laps. They just kind of went to the wall, and they would grab the wall and push off the wall, and they just glide through the water. And then after about 30 minutes, they'd get out and, I really had a nice workout today. Or just anybody would pick up weights or whatever, and they maybe do one set of weights or whatever.
And in 4 or 5 days, it would get old, and they'd be done with it.
Right. And
there's a really interesting guy online. His name is Matt Cutts. He's a former Google guy, employee like number 70. Interesting guy. He now heads the U.S. Digital Service Agency. They help fix like broken government websites, like the healthcare.gov website.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt Cutts does these 30-day challenges. You should look him up, Matt Cutts 30-day challenge. And every 30 days, he picks a different challenge, and he does it all 30 days.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's a really interesting kind of discipline that a lot of people lack. And he knows there's an end to it, where people who take on this goal of losing weight, they don't necessarily see a numbered end to this.
Mm-hmm.
They just say, oh, great, I might as well just quit doing it. So with him, he knows, okay, 22 days left. It stinks what I'm doing here, but I only have 22 days left. So,
so people, when you're going after something, you got to go after it, else you're not going to get results. It's very simple, right? It's just the nature of things. If you do not put in the effort, you're not going to get the results. With that, Bob, let's take a 4.5-minute break and listen to somebody else who talks about that concept. It's Mr. Zig Ziglar, Mr. Zig Ziglar is no longer with us, but he's with us in mind and spirit, and his lectures are on YouTube, so they're fantastic. So I want to play this one here for us, Bob. It's titled Prime the Pump, and he talks about just what we were talking about.
How many of you ever used one of these old-fashioned water pumps? Can I see your hand, please? Okay, well, he'd just a pumping away, it. After about 3 or 4 minutes, he said, Jimmy, better get that old bucket over there and dip some water out of the creek. We're going to have to prime the pump. How many of you know what I'm talking about when I say you got to prime the pump? Well, for you underprivileged non-pumpers, that just means you got to put something in here before you get something out there. See, unfortunately, a lot of people stand in front of the stove of life and they say, now, stove, you give me some heat, then I'll put some wood in you. That ain't the way it works. You got to put something in before you can get anything out. So many times, the employee goes to the employer and says, give me a raise, then I'll start coming to work on time. Or so many times, they will come to him and say, make me the boss. Now, I know I haven't been here very long, don't really deserve to be the boss, but I just function better when I am in charge of things. You reward me now, and then I promise you, I'll learn what this business is all about later on. Reward me now, and I'll produce later. It doesn't work that way. Can't you just see a youngster in school saying, teacher, if I take a failing grade home, my parents are going to skin me alive. Pass me on this quarter, and next time I'll study more than anybody else. Reward me now, I'll produce later. It doesn't work that way. Can't you just see an old farmer standing out in the fields in October and saying, Lord, I know I didn't plant a thing this year, but if you'll give me a big crop this year, I'll plant more than anybody next year. It ain't that way, folks. You got to put something in before you can expect to get anything out. Well, he's just pumping away. You know, that's hot. It's August. I mean, the question is just how much pumping are you going to do for a drink of water? And finally, old Bernard said, you know, Jimmy, I don't believe it's any water down there. Jimmy said, yeah, it is, Bernard. You know, in South Alabama, the wells are deep. And, oh, we're glad they're deep because the deeper the well, the cooler, the cleaner, the sweeter, the purer, the better tasting the water. And isn't that true of life? Isn't it true that if you could become an MD by 6 weeks of summer school, that the rewards would be almost minimal or nothing? And how many patients would you have? Isn't it true that if you become a sales expert in 3 days of a training school, that the rate of pay would go down rather radically? Isn't it true that anything worth doing is worth doing poorly? Until you can learn to do it well. We'll never know how many kids have missed a college scholarship because they didn't study an average of 10 more minutes a day. We will never know how we come so close to promotion, but we grew discouraged and quit too soon. We'll never know how much more success we would have had we just had a little more pumping in there, and pump and pump and pump and pump. Well, finally, old Bernard just got disgusted. He threw up his hand. He said, Jimmy, there's just no water down there. Jimmy said, don't stop, Bernard. Don't stop. If you stop, the water's going to go all the way back down, and then you're going to have to start all over. The reality is, folks, and I'm totally convinced of this, this is the story of America. This is your story. This is the story of success. This is the story of life. I believe with all of my heart that if you will pump long enough and hard enough and enthusiastically enough, that eventually the reward is going to follow the effort, and then once that water starts to flow, all you got to do is just keep a little easy, steady pressure on it, and you're going to get more water than you can possibly use. The basic problem is this. So many times people get involved in something, and they'll say, well, I'll give it a try, and if it works out, that'll be good, and if it doesn't work out, I mean, hey, I ain't going to kill myself. You know what I mean, fella? Well, I got to tell you something, folks. You're going to pump forever like that before anything happens. When you get into something, grab that sucker and get with it. And then once the water starts to flow, then, ladies and gentlemen, that's what strategies for success is.
So pump until the water starts. Do you have a water pump in your tiny home there, Bob?
No.
Okay. But we get the point. It's a lot of work at first, and then finally, after the effort is put in, you'll start to see results. And then, as he said, that actually is easier to maintain. So now that tiny home is up, all you got to do is just kind of keep it up during the summer months.
I don't have to build it again. Yeah, a great example of that Ryan covered at the monthly meeting was a sales guy who's been in the seat quite a while, Anthony, and does everything the way he should do it. And his repeat business numbers are off the charts. Mm-hmm. And he's a perfect example of that guy who, you know, really, really put the effort in and worked hard early on and did everything he was asked to do. Mm-hmm. And then it just pays off in the end where he's probably not having to work as hard. He probably works as hard, but he doesn't have to work as hard in the same way. Right. The more business is coming to him because of what he did early on.
Yep. And so a message out there to everyone listening that whatever you're going to do it to the best of your ability, or don't do it at all. Find something that you enjoy, and then that effort won't seem so strenuous, and you'll be able to hopefully achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. All right. Bob, thanks so much for helping me out with this.
You got it, Steve.
All right, and that was it for our 16th Selling for Life podcast. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, what? You can check out our website at sellingforlife.com. You can also leave us a message there or email us at contact@sellingforlife.com. It'd be super to hear from you. And we would love to also get some feedback on our show. Tell us how we're doing. So until next week, whether you're selling neckties or you're just trying to convince a coworker to help you with the podcast, one thing is for sure, Bob,
you're always selling for life.